Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Asher Agency, a full-service marketing agency with offices in Indiana, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. For nearly 50 years, Asher has helped our clients tell their stories, reach customers and prospects, and stand out from the crowd. To learn more about how we can help your company, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com.
My guest is Jodi Beyeler. Jodi, how are you doing?
I'm great. Good to see you today, Anthony.
Well, thanks. Good to see you too. And thanks for doing this. I've really enjoyed working with you in Goshen College, and I'm really intrigued by learning more about your story. We kind of started off working together pretty quickly, and it's been all work and very little play. So today we'll get to play a little bit and learn a little bit more about how you have come into the role you're in. So, Jodi, I want to start at the very beginning and talk a little bit about your career path. My understanding is you've been with Goshen College now for almost 22 years. Is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's go further back. And I want you to think back to when you were first considering careers and where you might go. What was on your mind at that time? Where did that take you? And assuming you pivoted, and I think you did pivot, when and why did that happen? So start at the beginning and then take us through how you got to where you are today, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's actually where I wanted to start too. I was just thinking about my own journey. And, back when I was a kid, I had this dream that I wanted to be Barbara Walters. I loved as a kid, watching her interview people. And I loved actually watching the nightly news. That's weird, isn't it? For a kid, but I loved the news. I loved her interviewing celebrities. And so I had this real interest in stories, in the news, in people. And so that was sort of my initial aspiration as a kid.
Yeah, and that was a time, for some of our younger listeners, when journalists were still held pretty universally in a high regard. They were folks to be aspired to. It's a less popular profession today, but I remember those times pretty well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I don't know that I wanted to be a hard journalist, but definitely getting to know people and telling their stories was something that was compelling to me. And then I grew up in Southeast Iowa in a small little town. And as a high school student, my first job, I decided to get a job at the Kelowna News, which is the weekly newspaper in Kelowna, Iowa, that we got at our house. And I was able to get a job there, not as actually a writer or reporter, but as a layout person. So, but I loved being in that world and watching the publication come together. This was in an era, we were using computers and such to do layouts, but there was still very much a tactical element to putting a newspaper together. And so it was fun to be immersed in that. And I was also interested in graphic design, was sort of an interest in high school. So that was my first communication job. And I got immersed in high school and college in some of those extracurriculars like yearbook and the school newspaper and our TV broadcasting here at the college. We have a phenomenal communication program at Goshen, and it's gotten way better since I was a student even. We're award-winning in at all levels, broadcasting and radio, TV, and newspaper. They're all winning state and national awards every year. And when I was here, we weren't winning awards, but it was a good program. And it was, so I got some really good experience in college. I wanted to be in communications. I wasn't quite sure what that actually meant or where I would with that exactly.
Yeah.
But sort of broadly speaking, I was interested in learning those skills and had interest in that. And then after college, I had an opportunity to get an internship for a year in a program called Sojourners Magazine, which is an organization and magazine in DC. And I was on the editorial staff there for a year. It's a publication that is a progressive Christian organization committed to social justice. And again, being able to be immersed among people and in a world that was really compelling and interesting to me. Was as an intern, whether you're making copies or doing some proofreading or whatever that you get to do on the sides, and occasionally you get to write and contribute some elements, but you're really getting to be surrounded by others who you can learn from. And that was just a great opportunity. And it was soon after that when I was ready to get my first job. And that's when I came back to Goshen. And I frankly have been here since.
So Jodi, when you were with Sojourners, were you physically located in Washington, D.C.?
Yep.
So you went from Iowa to Goshen, Indiana, to Washington, D.C. What was that transition like to, moving to the big city, so to speak?
Yeah, no, it was so different. I really did grow up among the cornfields of Iowa, and I'm from the Mennonite faith tradition, and my world was very much was that growing up. And Goshen College is a Mennonite rooted college, and so going to DC was a transition for me in terms of broadening my worldview and my connections and relationships, and just understanding a lot more about others, and definitely an urban context. And it was actually a week after I arrived was 9/11.
Wow.
And so that shaped that whole year. Of being in DC, and especially being in an organization that is committed to nonviolence and social justice, having a voice around what was happening in the world at that time. And so it was...
Yeah, at a time when there was a lot of us and them, at least in the conversation. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. And so that, I would say those experiences just really left me with a strong sense in terms of, as I thought about my profession and career path, like really being committed to wanting to be in a place that I believe fully in, that's aligned with my faith and beliefs, and is aligned with who I want to be in the world. And partly just because when you're in a place like that, you're surrounded by others who are also approaching life and work and in that way, and wanting to be in that type of community. So that was one of the things that really brought me back to Goshen, and finding that there was an opening here at the time that was right in alignment with what I had been studying and my experiences, and was able to come back and start working as a new professional at my alma mater. And I didn't expect to stay 20 years. I think I sort of had a maybe 5 years type of plan.
Yeah.
And 22 years later, I'm here.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear a little bit about the transition from going from journalism to the marketing communication side, because there were a lot of people who made that shift, and even more have made that shift in the years since. I sort of did. I worked a lot of part-time jobs, and one when I was just finishing college was for a very, 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 very small newspaper called the Peabody Citizen in Peabody, Massachusetts. It was me and the publisher, and that was it. And quickly determined that journalism probably wasn't where my career would take me. And over time, that led to marketing and communication. What was that like for you, going from, and let's be honest about how people perceive our profession. Journalists at the time, this is the side of truth and right, to, okay, now you're going to just tell stories for an organization and maybe spin things every now and then. How did that feel for you, making that transition?
I don't think it didn't feel hard for me. And again, I would say it was because I felt, and I continue to feel, like when you believe fully and strongly in the organization and what you're about and what you're doing, you want other people to be part of it. You want them to hear the good news and the good stories that are happening there, and to find ways to engage with you. And so sharing that is not hard. It doesn't feel like a compromise. I
Yeah.
fully believe in the role of journalism and working with journalists on, and what they do. And I recognize the differences and I respect that.
Yeah.
And so I haven't actually found it to be wasn't a hard move. Yeah. There are times where people, will tell me I'm, or ask me if I'm spinning something to
Yeah.
there are a variety of ways to tell a story, and
Well, and I'll say this, and I mean this very genuinely. My limited experience with Goshen is it's an organization that's very aware of its identity, is very forthright in that, and the story that you're telling is a very authentic one. You don't really need to spin things because you as an organization have said, we'd like to invite as many people into the campus as possible, but we're not for everyone. And we're going to tell a unique story. If it's not for everyone, that's okay. We know who our audience is. We know what our story is. We know what our legacy is. So building off that, I'd like to hear a little bit about your experience as a student and how that encouraged you to come back and why that encouraged you to come back as a staff member later on.
Yeah. Oh, I came from small town America and small religious community. And Goshen is a place, while deeply rooted in this Mennonite faith tradition, it is also a place that sends people around the world. So one of the things we're known for is our study abroad and global education program. That was a pioneering program 60 plus years ago. And it has sent thousands and thousands of GC students to places all over the world to not only be tourists, actually to not be tourists, but rather to be immersed in other cultures, to build authentic relationships that are meaningful and real with people from very different walks of life, and to offer our gifts and to learn from others. And that was an experience for myself. I went to Costa Rica when I was here as a student for a semester. And learned more Spanish, and I taught English in a high school, and I lived with a family, and I was very lonely at times. But you know what? It's okay to be lonely. It's okay to be pushed out of your comfort zone, and that was one of the things I learned, and I have just really appreciated that type of opportunity that I gained here. In addition, I would just say, being surrounded by faculty mentors who I knew personally and knew me and who wanted the best for me and for my peers. As a college student, I'm sure we tested them and challenged the administration at times over things that we were young and idealistic, like most college students are, and that's okay. And as an administrator now, I appreciate that role of students, and we have a student body that historically and continues to be one that cares about people on the margins and cares about justice in the world and calls on us to make things right. And I think that's good for an organization.
Especially a college. You're there to help grow young people, to challenge them, and sometimes they challenge right back. And I think that's a good thing, even though it might be a little challenging for the organization at times. So, Jodi, when you and I first started working together, you had quite a bit on your plate, and you've since taken on a new role. So tell me a little bit about your role currently and what your team is like, who you're working with to help you get the work done.
Well, I'll just back up a little bit to where to what I was doing and what the transition has been. So for the last 5 years, I've served as vice president for communications and people strategy. So I would have overseen the communications and marketing office, and then also the human resources office. And there are not many places in the world that combine oversight of those two areas.
You're the first in my experience who had all of that on your plate. So congratulations.
We try to break ground here and be pioneers in all kinds of ways. And we are moving to a more traditional model, I would say. But I have to just back up to say that I actually, maybe I shouldn't say actually, but I really think it was, it was a good combination. I learned a lot about human resources. That wasn't my background per se, but I care deeply about campus culture and about employee relationships and development, as well as internal communication. And actually, in hindsight, particularly with the pandemic, realizing like that actually was it was helpful to have these things together in this role, both the external communication and how we are talking about ourselves and what's happening here, but also then around the internal communication, because during the pandemic we were sending out weekly emails and we were having regular town hall meetings, and we were trying to keep people apprised of what was happening and changing. And so that sort of bringing those together at that time ended up being really providential for us, I think, to have them together. And feel great about a lot of the progress we made during those 5 years. And more recently, our president, Rebecca Stolzfus, invited me to consider a change and invited me to think about taking on advancement work, so development, fundraising, and alumni engagement, and bringing that together with communications and marketing, and letting go of people strategy.
Something would have to give at that point.
That's right, it does. And so we're making some shifts around, but so that really is a very new transition in the past month. And I'm excited about it. It, like a lot of my career, as you're talking about journeys here, I haven't had this all figured out. Like this hasn't been something I've aspired to per se. But I have been willing and open to new opportunities and new challenges and learning and growth, and doing that with other people who both President Stolzfus is a great leader. So working with her closely on all of this has been an honor, and I learned a ton, as well as the variety of other people on my teams who are just wonderful to work with. So saying yes, even when you don't know what that means, I think is one of my things I've learned over the years. And
I really appreciate that perspective. You know, my hope, and anecdotally, I've heard that there's young people who listen to this podcast, people who aspire to careers in marketing and communication, or who are just getting started. And I think at that point in your career, you think that other people who have had success, it's because they had a plan. And that's sometimes true, but careers sometimes happen to you. I certainly never would have predicted I'd be doing some of the things I'm doing today, even 10 years ago. But like you, I'm thrilled and humbled that I've had the opportunity to do it. It's all in how you respond to that opportunity. When you talked about your role in HR, it immediately struck me that on a college campus, and this is true of a lot of organizations, your brand is defined by the student experience with faculty and staff. So they're the best brand ambassadors you have. And having a role in being able to select them and onboard them and work with them really, I think, has the potential to make a tremendous difference in the student experience in a way that most higher ed marketers don't have the opportunity to influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is really true. That, in essence, they are what Goshen College is. This is what we are. This is our service, is education, and who we employ, both faculty, staff, that creates this campus and our culture. And so really paying attention to who we are as people here at Goshen College has been what I've partly been focused on, and then thinking about how do we share that beyond with prospective students, with parents, with alumni, and our community.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your team. You mentioned your team in passing, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about how the marketing communication department is structured. Who's on the team? What roles do they play? And how do they help you get the work done?
Yeah. Well, it has been a team that it's taken a variety of forms over the years and continues to evolve. And so, and it's a small group. We're not a large college, so we have about 800 students. And yeah, so we're a small campus, and therefore we also have a small team. And I am always amazed at how much and how quality of work we're able to produce together as a team for how small we are. So we're currently hiring actually a director of communications and marketing who I hope will be able to join us next month. And then we have an assistant director of web and social media content. And that person, really focuses on our website, on social media, just our digital presence. And that's sort of a new role that will keep evolving, I think. But we had a web role that was more back-end focused. And we're actually, as you well know, are working closely with Asher on sort of a transition there. So we'll be redoing our website with Asher and really allowing others, you guys, to help us on that back end, and then being able to focus our team more on that front end experience and content and storytelling, which is really what our team does best, and be able to keep that focus there. In addition, we have a full-time team member who is primarily focused on writing and news and telling our story on our website and sharing that through social media and the news and other channels. And we also have a graphic designer. She's been with us the longest on the team, and just is an amazingly gifted designer. And brings our brand to life in great ways. And that is currently our team. We're doing some other thinking about what's next.
So evolving, but a small but mighty group that
That's right.
gets a lot done, high quality. I will say, and again, I mean this very genuinely, the quality of design and message from Goshen really impressed me. There was a little bit of a moment when I was like, how are we going to improve upon that? That's already pretty good. And I'm pleased that the relationship has been collaborative, and really, the role we're playing is more to augment your team than to fix any deficiencies. You've got a great story. Hopefully what we're doing is just helping amplify it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I would just add that so we're a small team. We are focused on that whole institutional brand and storytelling. And, we do the work from creating news releases to advertisements to our alumni magazine to videos and all of our social media posts and such. But in addition, we would have some partners on campus in some other entities that are doing more focused work around our music center, for example, around our environmental learning center. That's it's between Goshen and Fort Wayne, where you are.
Yeah.
Mary Lee Environmental Learning Center. So we have a person there who's very focused on their specific work. Our athletics area has a communication person. And then in addition, we work closely with advancement and admissions, who both have some staff that play some roles there, support roles. So we have a sort of connected to a lot of different parts of campus. And then, the partnership with Asher, that's been exciting to really grow our focus on marketing. in addition. So
yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the website. That's obviously one of the biggest items on your plate right now. But what are some of the other major projects that are taking up your time, that are maybe exciting? Maybe they're keeping you up at night a little bit. Maybe it's a combination of all those things. What are some of the big rocks you're trying to move forward throughout the rest of this year and into next?
yeah. Well, I'll just describe a little bit about some of the other work we're doing with you guys.
Yeah.
It's not keeping me up at night because we do have good partners.
Well, good.
But for the past 6 months, we began a journey with you all around a brand awareness campaign. And that's, Goshen is like I said, we're a small school. We are a fairly unique type of place. And some of our traditional roots have meant that we have been quieter about who we are than maybe some schools have been. And recognizing that we have a lot to share and a lot to invite others to join us to be part of, and really wanting to grow our brand awareness in the region in particular. Goshen College is a Hispanic serving institution, one of only several in the state of Indiana. We've just gained that status about 1.5 years ago. And so it's a new, it's been a long journey to get to this point, but it's also a new identity in some ways. And we are recruiting and have a large percentage of our campus. About 30% of our students are Latino, and many of them are from the local region. And as many in your audience may know, so many people today, when they're looking at colleges, are really staying closer to home. So really wanting to saturate this region with a stronger, greater awareness of our brand and who we are and what kind of an option this might be for them, especially in recruitment, for students. And part of that then was we have embarked on a major project to renovate the corner building on campus. It's at the corner of College and Main. It's an old building, and it's where our dining hall is, like in the first floor. And the second and third floor of this building is called West Lawn. It had become basically storage, as we couldn't use it for residence halls any longer. About 30 years ago, I think it was turned into storage space, which is not the best use of an old building on this prime real estate corner. And so our nursing program is our largest major on campus. There is just such a high demand for nurses in our region as well as nationally. And we are actually the first Bachelor of Science in Nursing program in the state of Indiana. We regularly have local health care facilities wanting our grads. Our grads are just in high demand because they're so well prepared, and they're not only know the medical aspect, but just come to the work with a global perspective, as well as a deep sense of compassion and care for the whole person. And so we're bursting at the seams in that program. It's been in the same small facility for a very long time. And it's a program that has expanded significantly over the years, but needed better facilities. And so we are finally able to create that type of facility for them in renovating this corner building. And it is coming along great. Out my window in my office, I can see the progress, and it's just so exciting to imagine what that will be like in just a few months, that we'll be able to open that up and eat there again in our new renovated dining hall, but also then be able to have to be able to double, hopefully, our nursing program over the coming years. Well, that brings a real, as you know, a real need to market in a new and different way. And so that is exciting. And yeah, does it keep me up at night? Yes, I want this facility to be filled up. And that is what our community needs. And yeah, it would be great for our campus.
Well, it's such a unique story with the strength in nursing, with the HSI component, with the legacy as a Mennonite institution. Definitely some unique facets that give you some unique stories to tell, and give you a little bit of an advantage with some audiences, and really define a need to help people understand what makes Goshen unique. But a lot of great touch points there to work from. So, Jodi, I want to pivot to some quick hit questions, some things you've alluded to, but that we can dig into a little more deeply. This is the speed round of the show, but it doesn't need to move all that fast. Tell me a little bit about your best career advice. Whether you're talking to a student at Goshen, maybe you're talking to your son, maybe you're talking to someone who's just getting started on a career path. When it comes to building a successful, fulfilling career, what do you think is most important for people to focus on?
Well, I think most important is something I alluded to before, and that is to really seek to be in a place that you believe in and that you're with others that you can thrive with. This Goshen College we talk a lot about community here, and it matters a great deal to me. Our tagline is, "This is a place where everything connects," and it really does. We connect with each other. And so I think I fully believe that if you can find a place where you are surrounded by others that you value working with, that challenge you, that stimulate you, you are going to thrive, and you're going to do great work together. And so to me, that environment, the culture, the people, the mission matter the most. The actual job title, that matters, but it can change.
No, I think that's a great point. And there's a lot of parallels in your career and mine. And, one of the things I've learned is that while the work you do on a daily basis matters, the people you're surrounded with and the values of the organization matter even more. I'm really fortunate that this will be my 20th year at Asher. And when people ask me why I've stayed, there's a lot of answers I give to that question. But one is, I say very genuinely, if I were working alongside these people, it wouldn't matter what I was doing. If we were making widgets, if we were, a full-time dog walking service, if I was surrounded by good humans who all had a service orientation and who were great at what they did, I'd be happy regardless of the work. It certainly helps that, when what you're doing is aligned with the skills you believe you have. But it sounds like you have that too, and that's something that's hard to duplicate. And I think the message there for people who are looking to pivot in their career or just getting started is that cultural fit matters. It matters for the employee as much, if not more so, than for the organization. You just need to find it. And it's okay to have some stumbles along the road. I know I did. I wasn't a good fit for most of the organizations I worked for until I found a like-minded band of weirdos at Asher that allowed me to fit in. So there you go. Yeah.
That's right. Well, and you spend so much time at work. You're spending maybe not quite as much time as with your spouse or family, whatever that looks like, but it's a lot of time in a week. And so there's no reason to be miserable.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was something I read about recently, the American time use study. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically how we spend our time. And there's some fairly dismal information in it. When you're mid-career, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your family. So you better like them. You better enjoy the people you're working alongside, at least on those days. All right, well, let's pivot to quick hit question number 2. And this can be about either Goshen College, it can be about the work that you do. But I'm looking for your response to either a myth or misconception about your organization or your work that you want to clear up, or maybe something that deserves to be amplified and a story that maybe hasn't been told well enough about either of those things.
Yeah. Well, the thing that came to my mind with that question was really around the role of leadership and sort of organizational leadership. And for me, throughout my career, I would have had held the view that organizational leaders, executive leaders are somehow have always been on that path to get there. They knew what they were going to do, that they're untouchable, that they're different than everyone else. And I think as I've come into this role as being a vice president at a college, I'm a lot like other people, and I continue to remind myself of that one of my goals is to remain accessible and to be empathetic and to have my door open and to listen to other points of view. And I think we oftentimes put leaders in some sort of category that isn't really fair. And it's not to say that they haven't had some different experiences potentially, and also are carrying maybe a different load or a different perspective on the whole. But that leadership might be for you, even if you don't know that it is right now. And you might be being prepared to be the leader that your organization needs someday. And
well, I think as part of that, people who are more junior in their careers or haven't started their careers, they look at someone like you and they assume you've always been that successful. You've been in that position. I think it's very important that leaders like you do what it appears you are doing, where you share stories about a time when maybe you weren't as certain what your path was going to be. Mm-hmm. Maybe you did have to pivot, and to help them see the potential in themselves, that maybe they think that you're somehow different than them. But if you say, I went through some of the same struggles you're going through, hearing them out on what they're dealing with, but also encouraging them that if you persist through that, a lot of great things can happen. I think that's a very important message.
Well, and I would just add that sometimes we have leaders, sometimes the leadership we have isn't what we want, or isn't what we aspire to be. And I would say that there is also the opportunity to be the leader that you want and you need, and that there's not one size fits all to who is a leader and who can be a leader. I continue to trust myself of that.
No, that's great. Okay, one last one. We as marketers have a lot of tools and gadgets and hacks and tricks that we can use to get the job done. Some which help us be productive, some which can make us less productive. What's one thing that you use in your work that you believe is critical to your productivity, to your success? Now, I'll disclaim that I led you down a path. It doesn't have to be a technology tool. I've had people answer this question by saying face-to-face conversations. They've said, hey, there's this great thing called Google. You should use it. So it doesn't have to be anything profound. But what's a tool you use at work that helps you get the job done?
Well, it's actually not a tool. So sorry, I'm gonna go slightly different, but it was actually something I learned in college. And this is a tip that I pass on whenever I can. And it has served me well multiple times. And that's in the art of public speaking. Uh-huh. So in my job, occasionally I'm doing some element of public speaking. And I get nervous and I feel anxiety before such events, like a lot of people do when they need to do public speaking. And I would say the one tip that has helped me every time was the learning that right before you speak, if you take your fingertips, and you just put your elbows out wide and press your fingertips as hard as you can, and you just release the stress and anxiety from your physical body, it helps you let go of the nerves. And it works for me. I think it works for other people, and I would pass that on as a tip. If public speaking is something that you don't like doing, or keeps you the nerves around it keep you from doing it, you can be successful at it, even if that's the case. And this has helped me just reduce that sort of physical sensation that can sometimes accompany such an experience.
Well, that's a great one. It's one I hadn't heard before. And even if it's a placebo effect and it helps, then it still helps. A couple of things I'll add to that. One thing that I think is critical for people to understand is that even seasoned public speakers have nerves. They get nervous in front of an audience. That's a good thing. If you use that energy in the right way, that means you're going to have a sense of urgency. You want to do well. If you harness that in a positive way, it's one of the best advantages you have. The flip side of that is if you're not nervous in front of a group, that's probably indicating that something is wrong, that maybe you're not the best person to give that presentation. The other thing I'll add, I don't know if you've ever heard the bit from Jerry Seinfeld about public speaking.
No.
Where he says that people's number one fear is public speaking and number two is death. That means that if you're at a funeral, you would rather be the person in the casket than giving the eulogy. So there you go. So if this helps, then great. That's going to help a lot of people out there.
Well, I think it's a better tip than imagining everybody naked. I don't know. I can honestly say I've never tried that, and I don't want to start now. So, yeah. Well, Jodi, this has been great. I really appreciate the opportunity to hear a little bit of your story. As I mentioned, we work so fast and work on so many different things that we don't have a lot of opportunity to just talk. So from that perspective, this has been great. I really appreciate it. Oh, I thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a joy to talk to you as always, Anthony, and to work with you guys. So glad to have spent this afternoon together.
Well, great. Well, thank you. And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.